All right, well, welcome back, everybody. This is Music Talk. I'm Dave.
I'm Mike.
This week, we are going to do the new Steve Vai record. It's called Inviolate.
Yeah.
One thing I wish that he would have done on this record was incorporated his last name into Inviolate, right?
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah, because I mean, Inviolate spelled that way. If he'd have put Inviolate, I think it would have been really cool. I think he missed it on that. I don't know why. That's something he would normally do too, you know? I don't know. Anyway, so the album cover looks like this. It's got his cool hydro guitar on there, right? It's an interesting guitar. It's got a 12 string, a 7 string, a bass, and a harp all in one, which is kind of crazy. And the bass is like half fretless, half fretted. And then I think up here, the guitar, the 12 string is like a fretless from there up. I don't know. It's really strange. It's a strange guitar. So you got on the inside all the credits to all the players on each song, a little bit of thank yous, and Steve checking out. He's being cool right there. And then on the back, you've got this little cool symbol that he always has on everything, violet, what it means. And the back cover with some, the track listing and some psychedelic stuff on there, which is cool. So the thing, here's a CD. It's a pretty cool CD, kind of a little bit of Vai-ish looking thing. So what I was going to say, I was talking earlier about how I got into Steve Vai. When I first started playing music, and I want to say 82 was when I picked up the bass for the first time. And then we, of course, got into bands, me and Mark and Scott, our brothers. And Mark introduced me to Steve Vai first through Frank Zappa. And he had played a couple songs that Steve did with Frank Zappa that was crazy, some weird stuff. Like, well, it's Frank Zappa, so right, it's weird. And then he played this song that Steve was talking to someone, they were interviewing him. And then as they interviewed him, he started playing every word that the interviewer said on the guitar. So as she's talking to him, he's playing it, so it's like, Stevie, I was wondering, and it's unbelievable, right? So then around 1984, he put out his first solo album called Flexible.
Yeah.
And Mark got it, and we started playing the Attitude song in the band, because it was like super cool, right? That was the first exposure that I really had of Steve Vai. And then there was a band called Alcatraz, had Graham Bonnet singing. And the guitar player at first was Yngwie Malmsteen. Well, Yngwie left, and then Steve Vai took over. And that album was called Disturbing the Peace right here. And that's this record. And when I got this, I was like, holy crap. So Steve Vai's playing his crazy licks, but now he's in more of a song format, right? So I was like, man, that is super cool. So you got to be pretty cool when you're replacing Yngwie, right? So you go from Zappa, then you replace Yngwie, and it's like, okay. So then we used to buy magazines called Guitar Player magazine, right? And then this song was in there. This little plastic record right here came in, and it was a advertisement for Carvin. Back then, I think he used Carvin amplifiers, right? And the song's called Blue Powder. And man, when I heard this song, it blew me away. It's got Stu Hamm on bass and Chris Frazier on drums. And it was like, holy crap, dude. It was one of the best things I ever heard in my life, right? So then Van Halen was going through their problems, right? So that record was in the, I want to say it was 1986, I think is when it was. Yeah, 86. So he was playing a Disturbing the Peace with Alcatraz 85, then 86 he puts that out. And then Van Halen was going through their thing, and they were kind of fighting back and forth sort of, but not really. But in their records, I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but David Lee Roth's first album out was called Crazy from the Heat, right?
Yeah.
So then Van Halen puts out 5150, which is the police code for crazy, right?
Yep.
Okay. So then David Lee Roth puts out another album called Eat 'Em and Smile. Van Halen puts out one called Oh You 812, right? So then David Lee Roth puts out Skyscraper, which is a phallic kind of symbol, right? And then Van Halen puts out For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, right? So they're going back and forth with these album covers. So I say that because when Dave left Van Halen, he knew that he had to put together one of the baddest bands he could, just to prove a point. And then Steve Vai shows up on this record, Eat 'Em and Smile, with Billy Sheehan on bass, Greg Bissonette on drums, right? So you got this all-star band, basically. So that's bringing me, and then of course, Skyscraper, a couple other ones after that. But that all brings me to the Steve Vai phase. These were the times I was being very impressionable on the bass and some guitar, but mostly bass. So I grew up with Steve Vai in my early years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's always been this little thing in me with Steve, and then in like 89, he actually went and played on Whitesnake's album. It was called Slip of the Tongue.
Right.
And I have that too. I should have grabbed it, but I left that over there. And I saw him live, and it was, that band, that Whitesnake band was unbelievable because you had Coverdale, you had Steve Vai and Adrian Vandenberg on guitar, Rudy Sarzo on bass, and Tommy Aldridge on drums. And I mean, you're talking about an all-star band, right? Again. So it seemed like everything Steve did, he was always replacing these great guitar players. He was replacing Yngwie. Well, first he's playing with Zappa. That's a hard job.
Well,
Then
cool in itself.
Exactly. And he actually started with him by transcribing stuff for him.
Yeah.
That's how he got the gig with Zappa, and then, really young too. So then he goes through, he replaces Yngwie. Then he does, Daily Raw. So you could say he replaced Eddie. And then he went to Whitesnake, kind of replacing, what's his face? John Sykes, So, I mean, the guy, you could even take as far back as, Richie Blackmore, replacing Richie Blackmore at some point, right? Because, Blackmore was Deep Purple with Coverdale. So the guy's always been there. So to me, and of course he's got a bunch of his own solo albums out, Passion and Warfare, stuff like that. They were all big time, he's the Song for the Love of God and all that stuff, great stuff. So now we get to this record, and probably the first record I bought from him in a long time. I mean, I haven't bought a Steve Vai record in a while, but since we're reviewing them, it just came out. So why not, right? So,
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's kind of like a lot of stuff kind of was bringing me back. It's kind of like retrospect from watching Steve through all the years. So there's a lot of cool stuff on here that I liked. Even though it is definitely I would say a typical Steve Vai record, right? His early stuff was a little weirder because he was coming off the Frank Zappa. But then, he started to get a little more mainstream with his writing, I guess. So it wasn't as weird, even though he always did have some weird stuff. So with this one, he touches on some of that weird stuff, but mostly it's pretty much just Steve just ripping it apart, right?
Yeah.
So the first song, Teeth of the Hydra, it's all Steve. He does everything on here. So that's this guitar basically playing all the parts on there. Teeth of the Hydra. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's got some pretty cool changes. It had that little chorus section that was kind of gritty. You got the 12 string and all that stuff going on with the sliding up with the fretless. So, I mean, it wasn't bad. It was a lot of programming in there, and you had a lot going on. So it kind of, atmospheric, sort of, I suppose. I don't know what you call it.
Well, to me, it just sounded like a movie soundtrack. And
yeah,
I mean, honestly, and you're going to hear this a lot out of me tonight, it was overproduced.
Yeah. Well, he of course he produced everything. So I actually thought the sound of this record was great, though. I mean, I think everything had a great sound.
Well, there were a couple of things that drum wise, okay, a couple of them were muddy.
Yeah.
Lost in the mix. Rhythm guitar was way too busy in a couple of songs, and it just had such production on the rhythm guitars that it was just almost like a buzz in the background.
Yeah, he definitely does a lot. He fills in a lot of stuff too much. There's not a lot of open spaces, you know. It's
Right.
always crowded, you know. I will say that with you. I agree with you on that because there's a lot of times where I wish he would have left it open more so you could grab onto something,
Yeah,
you
to
know.
me, it was a big break when he got to Sandman. I loved the fact that that was wide open.
But see, Sandman was the worst song on there for me. I couldn't get into it at all. Uh, and we'll
It,
get to that one. That was the last song. So,
yeah.
well, the second song, and kind of, you know, when you're doing instrumentals, everything's instrumental on here, no words. The title of the songs kind of help me anyway with what I'm getting ready to hear, like Zeus and Chains, right? Second song. This one, you know, you had Jeremy Colson on drums, and then everything else was Steve. So Steve played the bass, guitar, everything else, keyboards, all the stuff you hear.
Mhm.
But to me, this one, it's kind of weird. It kind of starts out with like a warning, fanfare warning type thing, right?
Right.
And then, you know, you get to this change and it's like a calm before the storm. And then it's like, okay, Zeus unleashes on you, right? And
Yep.
now the problem's over. And now Zeus goes back. So, you know, they released him from the chains and now he's, you know, I don't know. To me, it was kind of like a pretty cool story, even though it was no words, you know.
I got down here. It's a good bass line.
Mhm.
And I also put on here, you know, my opinion is Steve's a master of effects and compression sustain.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that's the things that stuck out to me
Yeah.
on the song.
And I like this was one of my favorites on the record too.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I like the song. Um, like when we were talking prior to recording this, I just heard a lot of go back 15 years, even 20 years to the Rippington days and stuff. You know,
mhm.
there were a lot of assimilations in the music that sounded like the Rippingtons could have just walked in and just started doing this, you know,
Mhm.
and it
Yeah, it was a little more edgy than the Rippingtons, a little bit.
more edgy. But
Yeah.
the thing that I've got to say that the big difference was with this sound that Steve Vai got and what Rippingtons got. When you heard the Rippingtons, you heard all the instruments very clear,
Yeah.
precise, clean. And then here, I had a hard time deciphering a lot of what was going on at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I didn't really, I mean, like I said, there was a lot of times when he overlayered too much stuff in there.
mhm.
Um, but when you know, to me, when you're listening to a record like this, you're basically, it's Steve Vai is just going to rip your head off. And, you know, and that's what he wants you to hear. Right.
Yeah.
And this is a problem too that you have when someone writes everything, produces everything, does it all themselves. They sit around in the studio and they layer something in. You
You
know,
over,
you know what else would be cool? Let's put this in there. You know, and you know what I'm
you
saying?
overthink it.
Yep.
You know, and this gets into also recording techniques that were done. And Rick Beato got into this a little bit about the
Mhm.
quantizing and stuff like that, how it takes the total personality of the music out of it when you quantize.
Yeah.
What that means is you're leveling everything up to exactly on the beat.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you lose feeling, you lose dynamics,
Yeah.
lose your personality.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, the
and
next one, the third one, Little Pretty. This one again, you have Jeremy Colson on drums,
uh-huh.
which I don't know if you know much about him. He played with Shanker for a little while, and he also played with Marty Friedman, Megadeth, you know.
I've heard of it before, yeah.
And then the bass player, you had Brian Beller on this one, and he was, you know, he's played with Satriani. He's also played with the Aristocrats. I don't know if
Mhm.
you know them, but yeah, he's the
Yeah.
bass player for them. So Little Pretty, I mean, it was okay. There was a really cool groove that when it comes out of the breakdown there, and it's got a really good bass line there. But
Mhm.
those blast drum beats were killing me, man.
Yeah, they were killing me too, and
It was like that, you know,
I hate to say it,
diggity-doo.
I don't know who's playing drums, but I'm gonna venture to say it was either Bosio.
No, that was Jeremy Colson.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, the to me, my take on it was sound a lot like Jeff Beck.
Hmm.
To and again, I got to deal with the processing. You know,
Yeah. Well, the
I want
thing
to hear.
too,
to hear that guitar and the amp. I don't want to hear a bunch of pedals.
Yeah. Yeah, he's always been that way. He's that, those pickups he uses too, they give you that really high screechy sound
Right.
that he uses.
Yep.
But he does a lot of Jeff Beck stuff. Now, I mean, Jeff Beck is very hard.
You can't copy him, but you can sound like
Exactly. So, and you do hear a lot of his influence in Steve's playing quite a bit. A lot of his sliding and his bending, which Jeff Beck's the master of that,
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
now we get to the number 4, and this is Candle Power, which is totally full of some crazy bends by Steve Vai. Now, this is the one with Terry Bozzio. And to me, that snare he had in it was bad. There's something about that snare, man.
It was I don't know. I got down. Drums sounded good as in comparison to what you were hearing up to this point. I'm just talking about the clarity of the drums.
Right. And he really ripped it apart. And I mean, he was tearing it up.
Yeah. But Terry Bozzio has always had weird tunings on this drum.
This one to me reminded me a lot of what you would hear of Frank Zappa. Kind of reminded me of the Zappa song.
Well, it was probably a take back to the Zappa thing. And also, too, put down here, it was a Roy Buchanan-ish type approach.
Because of all the bending.
And the sound and stuff, I mean, it was just, I was like, oh, this, he's emulating Roy Buchanan a little bit here.
And the thing too, I kind of think about Zappa too, is because he brought Terry Bozzio in to play it. So he's probably like, I want to do a Zappa type song. Let me go get Bozzio. Because he played with Zappa, obviously. So then we get to Apollo in Color. And this is the first song featuring Vinny Coletta.
Yep.
And then you got Enrique Linder on bass and David Rosenthal on keys. And then, of course, all the guitars are done by Steve, which I love this song, man. To me, this was a great song.
I liked it too, but I got to say that the drums were too busy. To me, a little bit away from trying to even concentrate on the movements of the song at times,
You're right. And the thing about it, Vinny, lately is a lot of his stuff that he's been playing on is like this, for some reason he's been that way lately.
They're calling on him to do this stuff.
Yeah.
All of them are trying to, they're looking at the Ronnie Scott performance he did with Jeff Beck.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And that was a live, spontaneous performance. And that's not something you want to put down in the studio.
No, but this song is definitely a jazz fusion type song to me.
Right.
And I think they nailed it. The bass player rocked this thing. This was great. I mean, probably one of the best songs on the record, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Especially because everything was, like you were saying earlier, it wasn't so layered that you didn't hear all the parts.
Exactly.
This was more like they all 4 went in there and knocked it out of the park is what happened on this one. And I loved it. I thought it was a great song. Probably one of my favorites. I mean, it's definitely one of my favorites. I got 4 that I have stars by, and this one I think is probably one of my favorites. Probably the top 2 for sure.
Yeah. I mean, believe me, I was entertained by it, but at the same time, I just couldn't help but sit there and think, drums are way too busy. A lot of times the things you don't play are what speaks louder than what you are playing.
Yeah, but as a Vinny fan, you gotta love what he was doing on it.
I mean, what he's doing, I don't even want to pretend like I can sit down and figure out what the hell he was doing.
Right. I wish I could have watched him play it because I would have really been entertained watching them play this song.
Oh my God,
But it's a great song.
Trying to watch Vinny's hands, you need to slow it down.
Yeah, I know. And he's traditional grip too, if I'm not mistaken.
He swaps back.
Switch? Yeah.
He prefers traditional, but he swaps back and forth for power play.
Yeah.
And of course, all his play is powerful, but
yeah. So then the next song we get to 6 is Avalancha, right? And it's got Jeremy Colson on drums, and this one has Billy Sheehan on bass.
Yeah.
Which you can tell when they go into that one part, that's the signature sound that Stevie and Billy always get on there, the
Right.
No doubt that is them. You can tell it's Billy's playing. But one thing I will say, I'm glad that they didn't fill the bass line with a bunch of chorus and reverby crap that Billy Sheehan always puts on his bass.
Right.
I was so glad that that wasn't on there because I saw his name on the tracks and I was like, man, I hope it don't sound like this really chorusy stuff that he does on everything.
I just put good rocker by this one. It was a good rock and roll song.
Now at the end, the drums kill it.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that drum, man, he is just ripping it at the end. So,
Yep. Yep.
so this was definitely an all-out rocker. And then we
Yep.
get to number 7, which is called Greenish Blues, and it reminds me of like Blue Powder Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or it's definitely in that vein. And I didn't even realize it was called Greenish Blues until after a couple times listening. But when I first heard it, I was like, man, that sounds a lot like Blue Powder. And then I read it, it was called Greenish Blues. I'm like, well, that's probably because it's kind of a throwback to that song.
Go back. Yeah, I liked it. It was a good blues. I liked the arrangement and the way it was put out there. You know,
Now you know this one on Oregon had Bob Carpenter, and if it's the same Bob Carpenter, that's the guy from the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
could be.
That's the only person I could find that
Yeah.
named Bob Carpenter, which Nitty Gritty Dirt Band's actually touring right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they had Jeremy Colson on drums. He also had a guy named Philip Bino, I guess, on bass. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but he's played with Vai before. He's also played with Tony McAlpine and Slash. So, which we'll be doing another one with Slash here soon. So anyway, so then we get to number 8, which number 7, by the way, was another one of my top on the record. That was one of the 4 that was the highlights for me. Greenish Blues. I really like that one. So number 8 was Knapsack. And we discussed this a little bit before we started recording, but this song was done completely with Steve Vai's left hand. The whole song was his left hand. He had surgery on his shoulder, he had surgery on his hand, and he couldn't play with his right hand. So he was sitting around. He said, you know, I'm going to try to do a song with just my left hand. So this whole song is him on guitar and doing all the programming. Everything's done by his left hand. And the video he has for it, he actually plays it all with just his hand. It's pretty crazy.
That in itself tells you how much processing he's got on his guitar.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to do that and real cleanly and precise stuff. I mean, you got to have a rack sitting there with that stuff dialed in, you know.
Yeah, but his style too, that he does a lot of hard hammering on his frets, so he can, you know, press, you know, with that left hand pretty easily.
And he using Ibanez guitars.
He does. I think he used a Gretsch on Little Pretty, but everything else I'm pretty sure was Ibanez. And there's actually a video for Candle Power, Little Pretty, and I want to say Zeus and Chains as well. There's like 4 videos out there.
Yeah, so I like the Candle Power too.
That was pretty good. There was just that one snare though, because Bosio has like, I don't know, 17 snares on that song.
Probably.
You know, because I mean, the guy's got like a 79-piece drum kit or something.
Yeah, well, it takes 3 days to set them up.
So. Right. So, I mean, he's got every drum that you could ever think of on there. But there was one snare sound that he was getting in there, and I don't know what it was about it, but it just, I think you were talking about earlier how some of the drums sounded muddy. And I want to say it had that muddy sound for some reason.
Yeah.
But the drums itself sounded great, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people, of course, I don't know. I'm pretty convinced that everything that they did on this was done with a Pro Tools type scenario and a lot of programming, a lot of quantization, and But one thing I will say is somebody like Bosio and Call You Eddie, especially in these days and times, and especially with the Beatles being in the forefront of a lot of stuff right now because of the Get Back movie and all that, drummers are experimenting with throwing rags back on top of drums and stuff to change the sound, you know, and to solve miking problems in a live situation, you know, live miking and stuff. And it wouldn't surprise me if that wasn't something that he was doing.
Anderson .Paak was doing that on some of his stuff, you know, with Silk Sonic and stuff, putting it on their snare for sure. So
oh yeah, you know.
So the last song, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It really changes the sound. You know, I've been digging into a lot of that. All these tricks I've been seeing these guys show. The one that I haven't really tried, I've known about, is taking a snare head, flipping it upside down, and laying it on top of the snare, and using that. you know,
That's
with
cool.
a whole snare hit. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I could never find a reason to do that.
Well, one time I was in Chicago and they had the Northwestern band up there playing at Millennium Park, and the drummer for Spyro Gyra, I want to say, came up there and he played a song, and he took one of his small cymbals and put it on his snare and was hitting it. It was weirdest sound, man.
Yeah,
but it was cool.
Yeah. A lot of things like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's what Bosio was doing, something to that point.
Something
Oh,
muted
he
a little
probably
bit.
just had that snare just totally just tuned for that. Might even had it stuffed with cotton balls or something.
Could be.
I mean, there's all kinds of things you could do.
Right. So then the last song we come to is Sandman Cloud Mist. And this one again has Vinny on drums. And then you got Philip Bino on bass. You also had Dave Weiner playing rhythm guitar, which he's been with Vai for a while. And then David Rosenthal on keys again. And of course, lead guitar Steve Vai. Which this one to me, man, I know you were talking about you liked it, but I could not grab onto this one for some reason. It just sounded like it wasn't in sync. And also sounded too like there was a couple of tempo problems. You know what it sounded like to me? It sounded like, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but people write like a guitar line and then they go out and then they can spend money on musicians to put parts on it, right? So I have this guitar part, and then I go and find a musician and I can pay $1, $5, $20, $50, however much you want to pay. And then you send that track to them and then they put their part on it and send it back. Have you ever seen people do that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what it seems like on this song. It's like Steve Vai played this part, sent it over to Vinny and said, hey, figure out a drum line for this. And it was like almost like his guitar line wasn't quite to time. You know, like it wasn't in the tempo change. And then Vinny's trying to capture this. And at some points, to me, it was like, I don't know, man. I couldn't grab it. I've heard this song 7 times, and every time I just can't figure it out, man. I don't know.
I thought, to me, it was one of the best songs on the album. And I'm not just looking at the context of the writing and stuff. I'm also looking at the production of it as far as sound and everything. But the one thing that it did do to me is it took me back again to the days of Jeff Beck, like Blow by Blow, Wired, in that day and time. And it reminded me almost of like a direct lift off of a Jeff Beck thing, where it was kind of this little rambling thing, you know, the whining guitar, and you had the sporadic drum thing happening here and there and stuff like that, you know, and then it kind of flowed into getting a little groove going, you know. And I don't know, I just, of all the songs, this one to me was the one that made me want to go back and listen to it again. Most of the songs on this album, you know, I've got to say, you know, there were a couple of good ones, you know, like I say, Avalanche was a good rocker. You know, Candle Power to me was pretty good. You know, I liked the context of, you know, going to, you know, the Roy Buchanan-ish type approach. Apollo in Color, you know, again, like I say,
that was straight jazz fusion there. I really liked that one a lot. So
I liked it. It was just, I wish the drums would have been a little more spaced out.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I didn't mind it as much. I thought Vinny did pretty good on that one. I enjoyed that one. I liked, you know, Teeth of Hydra, Zeus and Chains, Apollo in Color, and Greenish Blues were the 4 standouts for me.
Right.
The more I listened to the record, though, the more I liked it. It seemed like I grabbed a little bit more onto it. It just never could get that last song, man. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was my bass player mind that just couldn't wrap around it. I don't know.
It could be. I mean, I was just relating it, you know, straight to that era of the Beck era there.
Yeah.
And, you know, Blow by Blow and Wired.
Yeah.
And, you know, to me, this is a musician's album. I don't think the general public at all would really want to sit down and listen to this.
No.
You know, and I mean, now, I could be wrong. You know, it would be good, you know, probably, you know, traveling music, something to put on.
Yeah. If you like rock and guitar, if you're a guitar guy, you want to hear some rock and guitar and crazy Steve Vai, high pitched licks and slides and bends, you know, he's got all that in there. But again, like you said, it's probably not something that the public's going to want to just kick back and jam on, right?
Right. And I just wish, you know, and going on that assumption, I just wish the recording would have been less produced.
Yeah. I didn't really mind it that much. I thought there was a lot of times when he layered too much in on the songs. I thought the sound of everything was great, which all the bass lines had good bass sounds. The drums all sounded good. Even the program drums sounded pretty good, really, for program drums. Couple times they did some blast drum beats that I didn't really care for much, but
I wasn't
yeah.
into it a lot. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think all in all, you know, you're not wasting your money buying this. You really are picking up something that is a masterpiece as far as what Steve Vai is doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's Steve Vai.
Exactly.
That's what you got to understand. And
Yep.
you know, getting back to what you were talking about, you know, where your exposure to Steve Vai was. My first exposure to him was on Crossroads.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think, yeah.
Well, that's, you know, that one he had Tony McAlpine, and he also had Dave Weiner and Billy Sheehan.
Right.
You know, I can't think of the drummer he had. It was probably Jeremy Colson.
Yeah, could have been
drums.
Could have been. They're his tried and true road band.
Yeah, and you know, I remember watching that too, where they started playing each other's guitars and stuff. Right. So that was, I think that song was like "Get the Hell Out of Here" or something like that. I think it was one of them that he did on there.
Yeah, I love when he flubs it.
Yeah.
No, he's totally forcing himself to flub it.
Well, one thing too about Steve Vai is, see, when I'm listening to it, I imagine his facial expressions too, because if you ever watch him play, he's always doing, you know, like when he'll go, you know, and his eyebrows and everything goes with it. And he's always got, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but even Crossroads, if you watched it, you notice he's always got a fan blowing his hair, right? Like it's always.
Oh yeah. Well, that's like Ozzy's, that drummer that Ozzy used, one after Kerslake.
Aldridge?
No, not Aldridge. God, I can't think of his name.
Was it Randy Castillo?
Yeah.
When
you see him, like I saw a live performance of Crazy Train, and he had a fan. It was just blowing his hair straight back.
Yeah, right.
Time he's playing, you know, like, what a pose. You
know? Exactly. It's always like they're going, oh, you know,
outdoors and the fans blow.
But that is definitely a Steve Vai trademark, that he always has that fan blowing his hair too. So anyway, well, I'm giving this record a 7.3. I thought it was great. It was a great record to me. A couple, I don't know, low parts, of course, but for Steve Vai, it's typical Steve Vai, man. I mean,
yeah, it is. It's typical Steve. He's expanding and the limits on what you can do with a guitar. I understand and I appreciate that. Yeah. I really do. But like I say, to me, what I'm looking at for guitar sounds is a good old Strat or a Les Paul plugged straight into a Marshall.
Yeah.
And used overdrive right there on the amp. And if you need anything, maybe you put a chorus down, you know, but other than that, what else do you need? You know?
Well, Steve's always been an effects guy, honestly. I mean, he's got the pickups and everything that goes with it. So I mean, 7.3 to me, I liked it. I like it more the more I listen to it. Maybe if I listen to it long enough, I'll figure out that 9th song, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I like the 9th song. I'm gonna give it a 7. You know, I'm being pretty hard on this one, but I'm gonna give it a 7.
Right, and it is difficult, man, because it's an instrumental. You know, so it's kind of, you know, you get some similar things going on. You start hearing one thing, it sounds kind of like another song and all that. You know, so it's difficult when you don't have words to relate to it as well. But I think he painted a pretty good picture on these, and I actually feel like he harnessed himself in a little bit more than normal
Right.
because he used to go way out weird stuff. So
Well, honestly, yeah, honestly, when I first heard the first song, I didn't pay attention to what the title of it was, but I actually thought it was a soundtrack to a movie.
a movie, yeah, it does have that, and it should be.
And it might well will be, but then I realized he wrote it because of the guitar,
Yeah, yeah, and you can hear every part of that guitar on there too, all the way to the heart.
Very last thing he hits is the harp.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
There's a couple parts in the middle too where he does it sounds like a Zitar or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that's where he's using that fretless
12 string.
string, and
Yeah.
he probably also uses that fretless part of that 12 string neck for slide work too.
Yeah, because I mean he's definitely doing some crazy stuff in there, and it's a crazy looking guitar, man. I mean, just look at that thing.
I
I
know.
mean,
I can't
I don't
imagine.
even where would you start?
I can't imagine strapping that thing around my neck. I mean,
Yeah, I know. My double neck's heavy. This has got to be heavy.
yeah, you got to put that on a stand. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, you can only play one song on this before you got to put that thing down. I mean, he had a guitar where he had necks on both sides too when he played with Dave, and he played both necks.
right,
So, all right, well, we'll wrap this up. It's a decent, if you like guitar, hard rocking guitar, basically, you got some little jazz in there and some weird stuff. But, to me, 7.3, Mike gave it a 7. It's a good Steve Vai record for his collection. If you're collecting them, you got to get this one. So,
and believe me, if you pick up a recording that Steve Vai's on backing up somebody, you're in for a treat.
yeah.
I mean, he's not going to let you down. And
And
none of these guys on this album will let you down anywhere.
right, exactly. And too is I know we're going on a little long, but I was just gonna say I kind of like it when people like Steve play with other bands in a song situation where it's not just them, sort of like with Satriani with the Circle, right? Or not the Circle, but Chicken Foot.
Right.
I love the stuff Satriani does with Chicken Foot.
Yeah.
And I love his stuff too solo, but when you get a Satriani album, it's another instrumental. So you're getting, you know,
How many guitar players do you know that can play Highway Star and cover all the parts on the guitar
the keyboards and the guitar.
and guitar at the
Yeah.
same time?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
come on.
plus you got Michael Anthony screaming that high Ian Gillan scream too. So that helps.
Well, that helps.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I mean, but yeah,
He played
Satriani does have one coming out soon that we'll probably do a review on that just to do it. We'll go along with it because we did buy. So, but I do love what he did with Chicken Foot, man.
Oh yeah, when
And
he does those organ parts on that guitar, it's just unbelievable. I'm like,
it really is. Yeah. And that's the thing, like when Steve Vai was playing with other bands like Alcatraz or David Lee Roth or Whitesnake, I mean, it was great because they were in song formats with vocals and they still did their thing. So I kind of dig that. So,
Yep.
But anyway, all right. Well, we'll wrap it up. 7.3 for me, 7 for Mike, Steve Vai, Inviolate, crazy guitar. Check it out. Until next time, y'all stay safe.
Peace out and listen to the music.